Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to VUX World, the practical voice podcast. Shout out to Obed Ahmed from BotMock. BotMock is on a mission to help organisations of all sizes build exceptional conversational experiences. UX is the key to discoverability and retention when it comes to your voice app, and it requires you to rethink your design process to understand the context in which your customer interacts with your app, and BotMock are helping you do all of that with their prototyping software. You'll be up and running prototyping voice experiences literally in minutes. It's an easy to use tool, it's intuitive, you should totally check it out. If you do want to check it out, go to botmock.com/VUXworld. That's BOTMOCK.com/VUXworld. Thank you Obed and BotMock for presenting this week's episode. Now, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus over the last few weeks. I've been on holiday, I've had a wisdom tooth out, Dustin's been on holiday as well. We've been working on an incredibly interesting project, which I'm hoping we can share all of the juicy details with you in the weeks to come. It is really interesting. So we have taken a slight break up until now, but we're back ready and rolling. Today we're speaking to Mike Page, the CEO of Phebi. Phebi is helping brands, e-commerce brands in particular, and e-commerce website owners voicify their website, adding a voice user interface to their website. It's helping to narrow that path to purchase by making the whole search process easier. So we can chat to Mike today about Phebi, about the mission, about the work that they've been doing, the clients that they've been working with, the use cases that they've found through bringing voice to the web on mobile and on desktop. And we also talk about the general convergence of voice and the web. We talk about user adoption, user expectations, business adoption and expectations as well, the Alexa effect, and a whole host more. There's also tips in there as well. If you're thinking about adding a voice capability to your website, there's a whole host of tips in there about things you should consider if you do want to do that. This is an absolutely epic one. I'm glad to be back after a couple of weeks hiatus. Me and Dustin in the hot seat. This is Mike Page from Phebi on VUX World.
VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. Branding with the big faces.
I love listening to it.
Kane Sims.
Kane Sims, the one and only.
Britain's finest, Mr. Kane Sims.
Dustin Coates.
I like it when you guys are together and talking about voice.
Without further ado,
Welcome to the show.
Well, here we are, Dustin, at the back end of the summer.
Yeah, summer's over. Back into the return to real life. How are you doing, Kane?
Very well. Summer feels like it's over, but today was a mixture of kind of summery, autumny kind of vibes. It was raining this morning, then it got out sunny in the afternoon, then it was raining again on my way back to the house, and it's just kind of been a little bit all over the place today.
Yeah, and I come from Texas, where summer doesn't end until November, so we have a little bit more time, and Paris is a bit warm today as well, but the offices are filling back up, and we're back recording this podcast, so excited to jump in and fill out the rest of the year.
Yeah, and our guest today has probably maybe not experienced the ups and downs of a European summer for quite a while, because although he is English born and bred, you are now over there in Florida. Mike, welcome to VUX World.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's very hot and raining here, but that's pretty typical. So it's a home away from home in that regard.
It doesn't sound too dissimilar to what today's been like. As I was saying, it's a little bit rainy, but warm and humid. You know, like when you go abroad and you kind of step off the plane and you just feel the kind of like the air is just humid. You just feel it. It's a little bit like that today. But welcome, Mike. Excited to have you on. Excited to hear a little bit about Phebi and the work that you're doing in the kind of voice industry. But why don't we kind of kick off by, just give us a little bit of an overview about yourself and kind of your career and how you've got to the position that you are right now with Phebi.
Sure, that sounds great. So thanks guys for having me. Excited to be here. So yes, as I said, I'm Mike Page. I'm the CEO of Phebi. Prior to that, my general background was media and advertising agencies. So I worked for WPP in various roles for many years. I also ran operations for a research company called Synovate. in Western Europe, and also worked at a statistical software company called SPSS that was subsequently sold to IBM. So that's the sort of general field that I've been working principally in analytics. But I also started a company called Cognition, which was a market research software firm. And so I caught the entrepreneurial bug there that I ran till 2014. And I sold to an Indian company and worked for that company for a while on an earn-out. And was looking for somewhere where my skills and those of my business partner, Constantine, could apply. And during this period, Alexa had come out. We'd started to look at some potential applications of using Alexa connected to data. So particularly the business intelligence use case, what are my sales in Germany? What are these types of questions that could be answered by a voice agent? We did some projects with Alexa and Google. And we looked at this, and we also looked at e-commerce, I'll talk about a lot today, I know. And we felt, there's a big macro world of, Alexa, Microsoft, Google. But there's an awful lot of other applications around voice, particularly for people who want to control their environment, that we felt that we could play in. So with that in mind, we started Phebi just a little over a year ago, so April 2018, to develop technologies and products and services in the voice sector that would target these sort of applications where people might want a little more control, or to be able to build something, with a slightly different value proposition to just plugging into Google. So that's where we came from, and that's where I come from.
Cool. Well, Mike and Phebi kind of goes together, doesn't it? I'm just doing a quick Google search, and Phebi, spelled the way you spell it, Phebi, is obviously what comes up when you search for it. But if you search for Mike Phebi, obviously you're there from LinkedIn, but you've also got friends. So it's kind of like Mike and Phebi from Friends kind of went together.
Oh, okay.
And that had a ring to it. That worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
and now here we are, Mike with the company Phebi, and that seems to be going pretty well as well.
Yeah, no, it has. It's it's been a great first year. The Phebi thing is that the name came from, and unfortunately, I don't know whether this is actually true or not, but it's a good story. I found a web page where it said that Phebi was a goddess who brought the voice of the gods to the oracle at Delphi,
wow.
Which is how I explain it, which seems like a great name, but I can't find the article anymore. So maybe I dreamt it and completely made it up. But anyway, it works. It works for us, and people remember it. So that's a good thing.
Nice. So what does it do then? Tell us about Phebi and what it does.
Okay, so at the root, we produce custom language models, contextual language models. So what that means is we take either a data set or a website in e-commerce, and we build a custom language model for that so that it can do voice recognition and natural language processing. But the instance is specific to that site, so you don't have to share the data outside. You don't have to use an API call or pay per translation second, or phrase or whatever it might be, and it's custom tailored to your application. So that's the root. That's the root of the technology that we provide, and we're developing use cases over time. So the main one is e-commerce. So we enable websites to have voice-enabled smart search, so that people can search using natural language and their voice on any device, and find what they want more quickly.
And what part of the stack, where does Phebi come in? Are you doing the ASR? Are you doing the NLP? Are you doing the search as well? Where, if we integrate Phebi into our e-commerce store, what is Phebi going to be responsible for?
Yeah, so Phebi, it depends whether it's a custom implementation or, so for example, we're on Shopify. So Phebi is available as a Shopify app. You can click on it, add it to your store on Shopify, and that's all automated. What Phebi will do is read the inventory and all the metadata from your Shopify store, build one of these custom language models, and then create a JavaScript plugin that will appear on any device. You can customize it to some degree, and then you hit the button, and then you say what you're looking for. Show me cool hats, or t-shirts with a moon on it, or whatever it might be, and Phebi will return the results using your metadata to target and return those. And we also do it in a custom module for, one of our most successful areas has been auto. So we're on a large number of dealer websites in the US. So you can search for, hybrid cars under 30,000 miles with a third row and a green interior. And obviously with all the metadata and all the VIN decoder type details, we can then pull up those answers and put it in an instant search environment. So that's how we fit in. We plug in over the top, connected to the inventory and able to return results. And ultimately, and with the version that we've just released, to take you through to whatever the outcome you're looking for, either purchase in something like a Shopify store, or schedule a test drive, or contact the broker on a real estate site, or whatever it may be.
So if we think of this in regards to the user flow, let's say I go to this car dealership, and what I'll do is I'll click on a button in my browser. It will start listening to me, and I'll say I want a Ford F-150 2019 model. And so you are streaming that over to the Phebi servers, and Phebi is doing speech to text on those servers, or are you taking the audio itself? And then from there, what's happening? Are you doing the actual search? Are you handing that over to a search engine? And then are you handling intents and entities as well?
Yeah, we're doing, all of the voice to text we're doing. So that is, that's handled through the Phebi servers, or it can be handled in a customer's own environment, which is another one of the use cases for people who don't want to share the audio files or have an issue with how the audio files are used, i.e. not sent to Google or someone where they can't control the environment. We did initially in the first version. We just returned results to the site. So we would find, for example, the stock IDs in the metadata, return that to the site. What we've been asked for and what we've implemented for our customers is to help them maintain the journey through that. So now we use the language model in a text form to guide the smart search. So you can type to it in the same way that you can speak to it. So it's kind of more fluid in terms of being able to provide the search. Yeah, and then we surface the search within the Phebi environment, which means it's faster. And also means that we can take the experience deeper, all the way down to a product page, so that you can have things like readout descriptions, or an example for a car dealer might be, you can say by voice, unlock the best price, right? And that's a lead gen tool for that auto, and then we obviously get a credit as having generated that lead. Or in a general e-com site, add to cart, what are my shipping options, and then check out. So that allows us to sort of manage the journey more fully. So in our first release, we just returned to the existing site because we felt that's what people would want. But the feedback has told us that people want a deeper, kind of richer experience. It has to go further, in order to deliver the value that that our customers want. And that also brings up the sort of accessibility angle, which is, visually impaired people need to be able to, purchase things through your store. Whilst there are things like screen readers and other ways that you can make something easier to use for the visually impaired, voice is a great way. And if you can complete the journey, then you can effectively have a non-visual end-to-end shopping experience on a site, all through an implementation of something like Phebi.
So did you say there, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that the the user would go to a site, they would see the Mike icon or the Phebi icon or what have you, they would activate that, then they would speak their search phrase, finding whatever they want to find. And then from that moment on, are you saying that everything beyond then is handled by Phebi? So all of the kind of like translating the search, the kind of spoken word into the search term, into finding the results, and then also even presenting the results and going through the checkout. Is that last kind of mile also part of the Phebi experience?
Yeah, that's right. That's what we've been implementing, because that's what we were asked. That's what we were asked to do. Because there's a lot of bad search for a start in a lot of e-commerce websites. I mean, there are some good implementations and good, applications out there, but a lot of basic search isn't that great. And in order to get to where we needed to be for what our customers wanted to be able to see, we've had to take them, through the journey. A good example is in the auto space. At least one of our reference sites, the smart search on their site is not too bad, but it only works on desktop. It doesn't appear on mobile at all, and it doesn't have any of the contextual things that we bring, like under 30,000 miles or between $20,000 and $30,000. So the fact that we can replicate everything that has, and we do voice, and we work on mobile, brings a much better experience. In fact, you'll find with most auto dealers, if you go to a mobile site, it's a whole bunch of drop downs which are incredibly difficult to use on mobile. So being able to do it in that way, and again, for a realtor or something, if you're actually in the field, as it were, looking at houses, and you want to look up if there are other nearby ones in the neighborhood, these are all great use cases for a natural language, voice-driven search experience on mobile. But yeah, it is a learning that, we have had to take it deeper than just using our voice to text and returning stock IDs or whatever to the existing site, because that concludes the voice process too early.
And as Phebi, as a company, built all of those components of the voice stack, the speech to text, the NLU, the search side of it, or are you the company that puts it all together in one easy to use package?
Yeah, I mean, we specialize in the technology. We're open to enabling, to working with partners to enable, the technology, through other applications. But for e-com search, it's clearly a good fit. But given that we're not Google, Amazon, or Microsoft, it's better for us to produce a fully fledged entity that we can present to digital marketing agencies or auto dealer groups or whoever it may be, and they can implement it easily, and then plug in, various other things, analytics, recommendation engines, et cetera, around it. So that's where we are with the Phebi voice search.
So that means you pulled in other technologies and you're packaging those, the NLU, the speech to text, the search side of it. You're packaging that together rather than building all of those individual pieces in-house?
Yeah, that's right. We package, a lot of it, we have built ourselves, because, once you've got what we've got, once you've got the speech to text, the contextual language model, the metadata, the computations that you're doing on text, it's fairly easy to replicate them in text form, and implement them. So it's not so hard for us to do those, things. But that's been our main goal is to get something that's easy to implement for people. And as I said earlier, I think it's just the learning that we have to go deeper, that you have to go deeper with a voice experience, than just speech to text, in order to make a solution that, that is seamless for the customer, really.
Are you going as far as handling the shopping basket and the cart and the checkout process as well, or are you handing back at that point?
We can do. I mean, there's obviously some learning to be there about how people want to go through that. Do they want to go through that in that way? I mean, we can do it from a technical perspective. For example, on Shopify, the Shopify API, supports all of that. So, there is no There is no barrier to doing that. I think we, our release at the moment is, going as far as sort of adding it to the cart, and then, then allowing you to check out. And then we will probably experiment with some different checkout scenarios, which we really want to cover, obviously, for the visually impaired as well, because that's going to be a key workflow.
And for that, are you thinking kind of voice enabling the checkout process? Because it seems to me as at the moment as though, because we've had Voices on the podcast in the past, and they seem to be doing something very similar in terms of helping bring voice to the web and helping search for products and all that kind of stuff. But we didn't get to cover this when we spoke to Voices, Brian Colcord we spoke to, because it's for smart speakers, which is where most of the kind of attention stems from, and it seems as though now voices have kind of been moving into new environments and voices becoming known, which we've always been speaking about on the podcast, as an interface as opposed to a device type. But it seems as though the kind of implementations of your likes of Voices and Phebi potentially is almost going to introduce voice into parts of the experience as opposed to voice enable the entire user journey. Is that fair to say? And when you say that you're thinking about integrating into the payment process, are you talking about integrating the voice capability through the payment process? Or are you talking about just integrating your back end into a payment process?
Yeah, no, I think it's voice, throughout the process. I mean, I think the conversation, one of the things that we did a lot of work initially, using smart speakers, using using Alexa and using Google, when we were doing the data side and forming up the vision for the business. But what we feel is that you have, your voice is a natural means of communication, but it doesn't necessarily have to go through the same, I'm having a conversation with you, you're having a conversation with me. We have completely, self-built language models in our heads that are allowing us to communicate. We don't have to go through Google or Amazon in order to understand each other, doing speech to text as a universal thing. So as it becomes more seamless, and that's, what we sort of call the Alexa effect, really, as people get used to having a conversation with a device, then as people become more familiar with that, then the opportunity to, allow them to have that conversation, to do something that they need to do, particularly where there's less of a personality behind it, right? It's more of a functional assistant. It's not trying to be your friend, or, it is functionally there to say, have you got what I'm looking for? Yes, I have. Okay, take me deeper. And through that process, that experience can be seamless when it's with voice, because it doesn't matter which the voice agent is. But if you're a website, getting that last mile, or, particularly if somebody is searching on your site and they can't find what they're looking for and they bounce back to Google and maybe do the search there, you're losing that potential prospect. Even if you maybe had the product that they want, if they can only search for it on Google, then you're going to be exposed to the competitors. Whereas once you've got them on their site, they can continue a voice experience, but this time the voice experience is a one-to-one conversation between you and the customer. Then I think that makes for a very interesting experience. And it's also seamless, right? It doesn't have to go through one agent. Voice is a natural means of communication with different agents.
Do you think we're kind of on the verge? This sounds a little bit like the early days of this, and I'd be interested to get your kind of thoughts on it. If you're talking about kind of voice enabling the kind of product search and then checkout process, and Google is working really hard, certainly on Assistant, to kind of voice enable that whole kind of like internet-wide search process, there wouldn't take presumably that much effort to thread those two together so that you perform a Google search via voice, choose the result that you want with your voice, end up on a website that has something like Phebi enabled, so everything is then voice enabled. So potentially, is this where we're heading, do you think? Is that we're heading down the route where the entire internet is becoming voice enabled, so eventually we won't necessarily have to be clicking and tapping and scrolling and swiping, actually we'll just be able to kind of use the internet without a voice? Is that where you think things are going?
Well, I think it's a way. I never said there's no the way, is there? I mean, there are obviously situations where clicking and going through and, with drop downs and sub menus and stuff is a better way sometimes on desktop or in other ways. I don't think voice will be the only method of interacting, but I think, what we see is a growing number of, e-commerce is not just Amazon, right? There's millions of sites out there. There's a strong movement towards what can I do to make the experience on my site so great that I don't have to, hand over to a platform or whatever. If I can make the experience so good, I'll give you an example. One example is like if you say, a small hotel group, right? If maybe that I book with Expedia, but maybe when I go there, they say, hey, next time you come here, go to our site. Say this code, you can book it all on your mobile. You say, hey, I'm coming to Miami. Do you have a room? I'm Mike Page or whatever. Then you can capture that experience and maybe build a deeper relationship with that customer than just the price-driven one, or search result or paid or whatever driven one through the platform. So I think, allowing people to stay in a voice environment, and then you have the opportunity to deepen your relationship with the customer rather than just picking up the AdWords or whatever it is driving it to is a good way, because then you build a loyal customer database, and those customers are typically more profitable.
What do you think, Dustin? Do you think that that we'll see a convergence of voice and kind of like internet browsers, or voicifying internet browsers?
I don't really think so. And the reason I don't think so is a lot of the work that, I'm seeing day to day with the customers that I'm working with, and that there are the right time to use voice, there's the right time to tap, there's the right time to click, right? Even on your computer, right? Or your phone or anything, there's different inputs for different things, and there's different outputs for different things as well. And additionally, there's different contexts. You're not going to be ordering hemorrhoid cream when you're in the office through voice, though you could surreptitiously do it through texting, right? Through text. And so there's going to be different experiences, though I think what we're seeing is that users are expecting there to be voice. Kane, I love this stat about 71% of people preferring to search through voice than through keyboard already back in 2018. And in the studies that I'm doing, when I'm speaking with actual users, they're saying the same thing. A woman said to me something that I found quite interesting. She said, I use voice because I'm making fewer mistakes when I speak than when I type. And so you're seeing that people are using it when it's the right area, but are we going to only speak to our computer? That gets exhausting, right? Even, as we do these 60-minute interviews, by the end of it, you need a glass of water. You need something to do. So we'll see. But I personally think that tapping the keyboard is not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dustin. I mean, our experience with all the applications is it's very contextual in terms of the environment that you're in. We've looked at the business side of it, right? Looking at business information. If you've got a room full of people barking, data instructions at their computers, it's going to be a pretty miserable environment to work in, right? When they could easily be pointing and clicking. I think the main thing, again, backing up what Dustin said, is, our experience is that it's now ubiquitous enough that you can stick a Phebi icon on any website, and generally people know what to do with it. We immediately get, as soon as it goes on there, we can track the searches, and even on sites that have no, that don't draw attention to it, don't really have any instructions on how to use it, they immediately start using it, in the way that you would expect. So on a car dealer, they start looking for cars because that's what they expect to do. But we also see extensions. So, in the first month or so, we found that when we looked at the exceptions report, we were seeing things like, can I book an oil change? What time does the service center open? So we can see that people were extending the queries, but in a logical way, in a way that made you feel that they understood, what a voice assistant on a website would be for. And I agree. I mean, environment is everything. It's you're not going to use voice search in the wrong environment, particularly a very noisy one.
And when you add this to websites, do you think of it as an assistant, or do you think of it as a voice input for achieving a goal?
Yeah, we try to think of it as for achieving a goal. When you look at how people engage with the system, a lot of people, they want to browse and they want to find their own way around the site before they interact with someone. And, whether a bot is a real person or a true bot, the fact that it's pure voice search means that they can try and satisfy their need and experiment about without feeling like they're being, controlled or what have you, or being pushed towards a certain thing. It's a more natural replacement for the type of search that they would do when they're experimenting, and we try to preserve that kind of feeling. I mean, we do readout, obviously, but we don't make a point of saying, hi, I'm Phebi, how may I assist you today, that type of thing.
Does that mean that users' expectations are different when it's an assistant versus just voice as an input?
I mean, it is a good question. Do people interact with them differently? It's hard to say. We say, I'll give some examples. Sometimes you can see that, you will hear say something like, "Oh, hi, Abigail, can you hear me?" On a site, and we're like, "What's that all about?" And then you go and check the site, and there's a chatbot on there with the name Abigail, right? So they may be getting a little confused between the two. But mostly we don't, we don't get a lot of that. But our philosophy has been very much that we are not, you could enable an assistant with it, but our job is to provide, a language translation service to help you find what you want, and not, and not go beyond that.
We mentioned customer expectations quite a few times. Obviously, the kind of smart speaker adoption is kind of rapidly and steadily growing, as it has been for the last few years. And Dustin's stats there, around 70 odd people preferring to search with their voice. And you've said that if you see the mic icon on a website, people will kind of know what to do with it. There's maybe a difference, or is there a difference between people knowing what to do with it and actually doing it? So we've been speaking there around, is the whole internet and web browsers going to be voicified? And we're saying probably not. But are you finding that people are willing and able and do often use their voice through your likes of Phebi when interacting with a website? How are you finding the adoption of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's always, so the longest sites we've been on is probably about 10 months now. And the number of good active voice searches has been growing every month, probably between 20 and 30%, I would say, each month. I mean, they grow. I mean, there's a couple of months where it drops off, but it's growing. We don't have any sites where the number of voice searches, is going down or even plateauing. So it is growing. We don't always, in previous iteration, we will have more stats over the next few months, because obviously prior, when we were just sending that we only knew what the voice searches were, we wouldn't know necessarily what that was versus the text searches. So come back to me in another 6 months and I should be able to give you stats on, 6 months of knowing all of the searches and therefore being able to see what the ratio, is. But there are more people using it all the time, and I attribute that largely to the growth of this Alexa, what I call the Alexa effect. The gradual education of people that that they can interact in this way. I mean, to give you some sort of negatives, what we have learned is when people are using it in the desktop environment, there's a lot of variety in the quality of microphones in non-specialist equipment. So, the microphones on phones and tablets are generally pretty good. But on laptops, not necessarily always the case, right? It's often, tucked away near the fan or something. So you can see, we can see accuracy issues if people, maybe try voice on a low-end laptop, let's say. That I think will change over time. But it is something clear. So some customers, for example, put Phebi only on mobile, right? So it only appears when you visit it on mobile. Others with all of it. If you look at the accuracy ratings there, it's super sky high, 98% plus on mobile, but it can drop off if you use desktop as well. So just a sort of a pointer for the audience, that is an area. A lot of laptops particularly weren't really built with this type of, voice usage in mind.
Why is that accuracy going to fall off if the speech-to-text engine is the same across all of those platforms?
Yeah, it's the microphone. So the quality of the input from the microphone on a low-end laptop, not all, but if the inbuilt mic is close to the fan or at an odd angle from where the person using it is sitting, people don't necessarily use their have not prior to this sort of voice revolution, have not used their laptop microphones a huge amount for voice. I mean, many some don't even have them, right? I mean, there's obviously the case of some that don't have microphones. It's not a major, most of what we do is around mobile anyway. But it's just a noting that microphone quality on, laptops and desktop equipment is not necessarily optimized for the voice first future in the way that an Alexa or a Google Assistant or, a good microphone that you might have plugged in is. So it can affect your accuracy.
And how do you correct for that? Because we know that users don't care. They don't care that the speech-to-text was incorrect. They just want to find what they're looking for. How can a search or an NLU come in and direct them to what they ultimately want, irrespective of any speech-to-text failures?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a speech-to-text failure. It's just if the microphone if you stand far enough away from a microphone and whisper, it won't hear you, and therefore it's nothing to do with the nothing can detect it if it can't hear it. So that that is just the pointer. I mean, we do learning for it. Our accuracy is as good as, we test it constantly against Google and Alexa, and it's the same, if not better, sometimes better because of the contextual nature. There's less confusion in the Phebi search, right? If you say, if you say a word that's in the taxonomy that's related to this site. I mean, the example we always give is the Julia one, right? Alfa Romeo has a product called the Alfa Romeo Giulia, Giulia. If you say Julia to any other voice-to-text engine, it will give you Julia as the most likely response to that. Feed that in. Obviously, you don't get any results, whereas with Phebi, you'll hear Julia and get it through. So we're able to, if it sounds like something that's in our list, then it's more likely to be. So we can target in that way. But my point was more to do with the fact that if you're not on mobile only, then the capture device can have issues. But that's an issue for Google and everyone else as well.
I've noticed that with calls. If you have a call with someone who's using the built-in laptop mic and not a pair of headphones, then it can be a struggle even for humans to hear. And so sometimes when we've had even podcast guests in the past have been using the built-in laptop mics, and the amount of editing and cleaning up and EQ and compression and loudness correction that needs to go into fixing that is a huge ordeal. Dustin, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I was, obviously the speech to text, you can get better, you can get worse speech to text, but I sort of want to go back to the question though of ultimately the user doesn't care, right? For those 5%, those 2%, the 3%, whatever the percentage is where there's some sort of misunderstanding, the user still wants to find an answer. So how can website creators, search engine developers, how does Phebi handle that situation where, okay, well, it was misunderstood. We clearly don't know it's misunderstood because we're trusting our speech to text, but how do we make sure that they're still getting to what they're looking for? Are there any tips that someone can take away there?
Yeah, I mean, typically people will repeat, right? When things, obviously, like we get exception reports, so we can see when searches have failed. So we can track things that maybe have difficulties. I mean, 8 is a classic example, right? 8 and 8, anything that contains an 8 can be difficult for any of these speech to text. So you can refine on the back of that. But, mainly what we do is we try to look in the context of what they're looking for, right? And I think that's one of the things that we can improve on is, as we zero in into where the words fit in context, then we can, zero in on, even if we haven't maybe heard it correctly, what it might be. I think, and this is one of the benefits, I think, for contextual language models, as the example I was giving earlier, is if your universe is slightly less than the entire language, it's going to be easier for you to tune than if you're tuning against, this could be any word, any sentence containing any words in or any other language, rather than a sentence about, looking for a car or a T-shirt or a car or whatever. So I think, we have been working on, things to refine or what to do if it doesn't understand. But ultimately, I think there'll always be some percentage of that. And generally, people just ask again. The accuracy now is pretty good. We don't get, maybe sometimes with very thick accents, there's still issues, but generally, we don't have too many issues. And the nice thing is you can always try these things now. We can always compare ourselves against our competitors because we can use the API to check.
Or in future, potentially, given what the BBC have been talking about, you might be able to just plug into BBC's NLU and pick up regional accents without a problem.
That'll be I read that. That'll be an interesting project to watch. I think how that develops.
Yeah. Just want to hop back to, we were talking about the adoption, and you were saying that when you implement a voice search capability onto your website, you've noticed that it's increasing month on month by 20 to 30%. Is that search, and I know we don't have the ratios in terms of if that's a certain proportion of search terms and whether that's a certain increase in overall searches or whether that's a shift from typing to speaking. But do you have any information on what that's doing and whether that's affecting the conversion rates of those websites?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's one of the things that, in our first read, the measure was the number of searches, and that's what, has kept people happy. But what, that's why, one of the reasons that we're extending is to help our customers attribute to, purchases basically, or, favorable outcomes to the implementation of voice on their site. What we do have some examples where we've got a few customers who have promoted separately the use of voice. So they've not just put it on the site in the way that we've been describing, right, and seeing how people will use it. They have promoted. So, we have a spare parts site, right? They have customers. They sell, specialist parts for classic cars, and the owner there has promoted it to his user base, and then we see a very high, adoption rate among those, right? Because they know that they can go there when they're all greasy, and just stab at a cheap tablet, that they've got, and start saying, do you have any, dashboard clocks for a Datsun 240Z, or do you have a, whatever whatever it may be. So we can definitely see higher good outcomes for those that have promoted it, and have a reason for promoting it. They're interesting because they have a reason to promote it, which is that most of the people are in a garage and they're looking to see whether they've got a part, and they don't have to go in and they don't have to get the computer dirty and all of that other stuff. So it's a really nice, interesting use case, but they've participated with us, not just put the information on there. In terms of conversion, as I said to you before, we are now tracking that. So if you have me back, we'll just get a snippet. In a few months' time, I'll be able to give you some solid stats on that from the Phebi perspective.
Okay. And we've spoke about kind of end users and customers being kind of more aware of voice interfaces and kind of the Alexa effect and all that kind of stuff, and knowing what to do when they see a little mic icon on a website and stuff. Are you finding that the same awareness is true of your partners that you're working with, or your potential clients who you might work with in future? If anybody, wants to implement Phebi on their website, do you think that there is enough of an awareness within that target market on the business side that this kind of capability is available for their websites? Is there enough awareness in that space, do you think?
I think it's growing. I think when we started, it was, I would call it quite early adopter phase, but now it is an increasing awareness thing, and also other people, there are other people doing things. There's a dealer company that's implemented something on their site, and so it's becoming a more accepted thing. I think there are different reasons. I mean, one of the reasons, that we see a lot of is this, helping the visually impaired, particularly here in the US, because of the Americans with Disabilities Act. A lot of e-commerce sites have been sued for not being usable by the visually impaired. So clearly any activities that, anything that you can do to make the site more usable, especially, through purchase, that helps you comply with that, and shields you from some of the litigation that might be coming your way. That's another, that's another driving force. It's, you might put it on specifically to cater to the visually impaired, but, we feel that you will likely stay for the increased sales, because you will open a new channel, to all of your customers, not just the visually impaired.
And what would this might be an obvious question in some sense, because there's, on the one side, there's more work involved in doing one thing versus the other. But aside from the amount of time and effort that it would take, let me rephrase that. What would be the benefits for an e-commerce website using something like Phebi versus them trying to experiment with kind of establishing themselves on something like Alexa?
What do you mean, Alexa as in the voice to text, or Alexa as in the smart speaker? Because
Alexa as in the voice assistant platform. So, for example, I'm a retailer. I have a website. I have a choice. If I want to experiment with voice, or if I want to add voice to my offering for my customers, I've got a lot of news and headlines over here every day saying Alexa's now working with the NHS, Alexa's now able to book a pizza, Alexa's now able to do that. What would be the reason why I would invest in something like Phebi versus invest in trying to get a presence on the Alexa platform or on Google Assistant?
Well, it's a different thing. I mean, our positioning is that we're, for you on your website, facilitating a conversation between you and your customer, right? Not a conversation that is facilitated by, enabling Google and or Amazon to, learn more and execute their plan. Our plan is different, right? We're not trying to learn from all of this data. We're not listening in on this data. We're not building, higher level targeting engines, whatever it may be. Plus, you have the basic benefits of a contextual language model, which is it's custom to you. It's cheaper to run because you don't have the API calls and the fees that those guys charge. So it's not variable cost. It can be a fixed cost. And it's complete and it's ready to implement out of the box. So I think the Alexas and the Google exist, but you have to ask yourself: are all conversations in e-commerce going to be facilitated through one of those two companies' servers? That is a legitimate question, but we certainly see the benefits of contextual language models, the benefits of not sharing, the price benefit, and the fact that it's ready to implement, right? That you can implement it, and the accuracy is the same, if not better. Those are the pillars that we hang our e-commerce offer on.
Yeah, it seems that that's. I mean, Mycroft and some of the other voice assistants have a similar approach, don't they, in terms of trying to, shy away from feeding those big platforms and kind of trying to do something that's independent, more secure. Not that Amazon and Google isn't secure, but that's kind of the angle, isn't it? What tips would you have then for people getting started if they wanted to implement voice capabilities into their website? Obviously they could go ahead and try out Phebi. Is there any other things that they need to be aware of, any other things they need to watch out for, any other tips that you have around the way to think about it or how to approach it? What advice would you give?
I think the primary ones are look at the descriptors and the metadata on your site, right? Synonyms are very important. Being able to search with different people in voice might use different terms. I might say sunglasses, I might say shades, right? I might say sunnies. There are things like this that tend to come up more in natural spoken language where people are looking for things. So I think you need to think about your product descriptions in that way. Also how you manage if you want things to be, I'll give you an example. We do a swimming pool equipment company, right? The number of the number of BTUs of heat is critical, but they don't have that in its own field in their metadata. So even though we have the ability to do it, it's hard for us to say, show me pool heaters over 150,000 BTUs because that's what would fit your pool. So a lot of it is making sure that the stuff that you can just throw up there on the screen visually, is optimized to be found using voice, using language in the way you want it, and that'll go better whether you go with Phebi or you go with, Google or Amazon or whatever you go with. Because if your data is not, at least if you're not considering it in that way, it can make it harder to create this seamless voice experience. It's not just a case of slapping it over the top. You have to think about what people are going to want to try and do.
Lipstick on a pig.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
I think a lot of companies are probably going to be in a bit of bother, to be honest, because the amount of really poor quality data that you tend to come across is absolutely staggering. And now, obviously data has always been really, really important, but now all of a sudden, there's another reason to have your data in shape, and lots and lots of places don't tend to have the data in shape, do they?
No, that's right. I think, and I see a lot. We were at the IRCE Internet Retail Conference in Chicago earlier this year, and there are companies out there that are helping people with, generally with tidying up their data, for improved search. I think, that is happening overall. This is all about optimal, in the e-commerce, it's all about leaky funnels, right? It's all about the idea that somebody's there and you're losing that potential customer either by not finding, not helping them find what they want, even though you've got it, or not giving them such a good experience that they bounce straight back to Google and do the search and wind up on somebody else's site. The effort and the expenditure that people put into getting someone onto their site, you've got to do everything you can to try and satisfy that need when they're on there, because every bounce has a cost.
And Mike, who should be responsible for making sure that content is voice and conversational ready? Does that fall within the tech side? Is that responsible for the product team? Is that marketing? Who should be handling that?
Yeah, I don't think it's the tech team. First of all, I think it is product marketing, digital. I think those are the product marketing, sales, whatever function, and digital should be the ones looking at that, because it is an area that will grow, and it fits broadly into that digital realm. It's not too different from looking at Google AdWords or SEO or any of these other digital services. I think optimization in that way should be a digital marketing function.
Cool. Dustin, any other questions for Mike?
No, I think we've covered a lot. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about Phebi and about what you're enabling businesses to do on the web.
Oh, pleasure. Been fun.
Where can people find out more then, Mike? Where can people find out more about Phebi and or reach out for you for some assistance if they need help getting started or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on the web at getphebi.com. That's GETPHEBI.com. You can also find me and the company on LinkedIn. There's also quite a few articles, particularly about things like the auto industry experience and others that you can track down on LinkedIn if you look for Phebi, PHEBI. So you can check out some of the info there, or you can just write to me directly at mike@getphebi.com.
Fantastic. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Awesome.
That was Mike Page, CEO of Phebi. Interesting discussion now. It has been a while, as we said at the end, since we spoke about voice and the internet in general, as opposed to voice assistant platforms. And I think Mike shared some really interesting insights there, certainly around the adoption of voice search on websites, increasing 20 to 30% month on month. We didn't necessarily get down into some of the details in terms of specifically how it's all put together and how it's all working, and we couldn't get to the conversion rates and things like that. So we probably did leave a little bit on the table there, but nevertheless, I think that voice and the internet, voice in the browser, voice on websites seems to be something that has legs, seems to be something that has potential. And as I mentioned, we spoke to Voices last year. They were doing something kind of sounded fairly similar, and they said they were getting some traction. It sounds as though Phebi are getting some decent traction. There's awareness within the user base. Customers and consumers know what it means to have a microphone on a website, broadly speaking. And it seems now that website owners and brands, e-commerce brands, are starting to develop that awareness as well about the fact that they can have voice capabilities on their website. So interesting conversation, and we'll check in with Mike hopefully in a few months' time when he's got more data on the total percentages of searches that are voice searches versus typed searches, and hopefully some information about the conversion rate as well. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, Dustin, and as always, boys and girls, thank you all for listening. Until next time, see you later.